And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsport is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. Well, hello and welcome back to the We Happy Few 506 podcast, The Nearly Men. I believe there's been a bit of a break. I've had some stuff going on. Doug's been growing his hair out, as by the look of things, as our guest, Ben Mayne. Dougie, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. I love the tash. What was this? I mean, that's a real handlebar job you got in, and that's got full. You got the full effect now.
Yeah, and a sneeze that'll come off. I've glued it on, but yeah, it's not bad, is it?
It's pretty good. What made you decide to grow that?
The Autumn Nations rugby, because all the boys have got stashes, and I want to look like them because I
Okay.
still delude myself I could have played rugby at some level, even though I really couldn't have done. Um, Ben Mayne's looking fantastic, mate. You're looking very SAS Rogue Heroes right there.
I wasn't about an hour ago when I got back from the motorbike show and was drenched to the bone.
That's what's going on with you. I was gonna say you look a bit like you've been through a car wash.
Yeah,
A
I thought
motorbike show. Whereabouts was that?
Birmingham NEC.
Was it just like a manufacturer's one, like a major one, or was it like a kind of bike shed type one?
No, it's a big one. Wow, the majority of manufacturers are there. Lots of retailers, dealers, all different stuff. But yeah, it's pretty big.
Oh, cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. So, for those of you who don't know, which you all do, Ben Mayne is our resident historian, or is going to be our resident historian, because I'm going to keep dragging him back on the podcast. Top guide with Ledger and his own personal stuff. Um, we decided to bring you on the pod, Ben, to do a sort of historical recap of the year. Do you like
Yeah,
that? Yeah, my
yeah.
dog just made out whimper there. That's obviously
In
a heck
agreement.
of a critic. Um, so what are your highlights of, because it's a big year, been a big year, hasn't it? Because it's been the 80th anniversary, obviously, of Overlord, Market Garden, and we've got the Bulge coming up as well.
Yeah, as you say, Matt, it's not over yet, really. I've still got two tours left this year. It's been absolutely crazy busy. And I would say that is because of the demand for people just wanting to go out visiting the battlefields, the ones you've mentioned, and the Bulge to come. The highlight for me, I'll probably say, has or was the 80th anniversary in Normandy, just being around with the British veterans and spending that time with them because it is getting to that point where we're not going to have them around much longer. So it's like cherished time with them. It's good just to be in their presence, in their company, just listen to the stories still. And yeah, that without a doubt is probably the highlight of the year, being with the veterans.
How many were left? Like how many and how old were they? Because there's only like literally handfuls left now, isn't there? Pretty much, or is there still several hundred sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm a ambassador for the taxi charity Military Veterans, and the group that we took away with us there was 10. There was
Wow.
a
Okay.
few other smaller groups there, but I would say, well, the Royal British Legion did take quite a few out, but the more independent charities, we were the largest. I think the eldest was 102 years old, one of the ladies.
Wow.
The youngest is 98.
The pup.
Yeah.
Wow.
There is one lady, I think she's just turned 104, that was out there independently. I think, well, the taxi charity did take her a few weeks before it got busy because the BBC did some interviews with her. So you wouldn't believe it to be in their company, and you wouldn't believe their ages and just how well some of them look as well.
Oh, yeah. I remember touring with Bradford Freeman with the World War II Museum, and I think he was 95. I believe he was 95 at the time. And we did a tour. We did a 13-day tour. You know how brutal those 13-day tours are. Usually for the first 2 days, everyone's kind of on a buzz, especially the guys that have come over from America. They're on a buzz and all the rest of it. And then the jet lag hits and then the travel hits. And you stand up to say something on the bus and everyone's like, he never napped, not once. He was alert as anything. And then he was going dancing on a night and teaching me how to shear a sheep in 30 seconds as well. An imaginary sheep, but still teaching me how to shear a sheep. And he looked great. Like he just such a handsome dude as well. Just
Yeah,
incredible.
They're
it's
force of like there seem to be force of natures, don't they? Even like I mean, I've spoken about my dad. He's 91, and he's
Right.
just like completely fully active. It's almost kind of I don't know. Well, I think once you get to that age, if you've made it to that age, you kind of you got to have. So I was at an AA meeting a year ago, and this I heard this woman was in my local meeting. She was American, and she was just touring Europe, like doing a sort of a bucket list tour. And she was 90, I think 95 or 96, and she was traveling on her own, but meeting kind of relatives that would, in each stop or friends at each stop that would sort of show around, sightseeing places. And at the end at the end of her share, she said, "Growing old ain't for wimps." Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
It's
that's true.
kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like I think. And so if you are around at that age, I think you got to have a bit of something special about you, haven't you? Really? Yeah.
yeah, it's like they just keep going and going, and you do have to be mindful that they'd sit out and speak to everyone all day, but you need
Yeah.
to get them away for a quiet lunch somewhere, give them that downtime and break.
Mm,
And as you two will well know, the media it can get quite intrusive at times as well. So you do have to guard them, protect them, obviously safeguarding
mm,
to make sure that they're not getting exhausted. But they come back, and some of the ones that I do speak to, away from being away with the charity, uh, for a few days afterwards, they're completely wiped out. And it's understandable. Even I am when I come back after five,
mm,
6 days over the anniversary with just how busy it is.
mm.
I can't imagine what it'd be like for a 98 plus year old.
What was your most recent tour you've done then, Ben?
I was a Battle of the Bulge just over 3 weeks ago.
What was it? A long one? Was it
No,
how
it
many
was
days was
quite
that?
a short one. It was only a 4 day tour. It was
Yeah,
our traditional end of season, last tour of the season. So
yeah,
I did 5 days in Normandy, came back for 12 hours, and then went straight out to the Bulge for 4 days.
right.
So yeah, it's nice to be home over the winter period and not traveling all the time because up to now I've done 31 tours this year, which is
Cool.
yeah, with two left, it's crazy managing it over the whole year, spacing it out. Um, I won't be doing that many next year. I won't be doing that many next year. It's nice to be home for a break, but back out in a week's time on the next tour.
And how do you foresee things going now? Was the 80th like a zenith for touring, or will it just carry on? I mean, obviously what we've spoken about is that the amount of veterans is going to thin down, and not just them passing away, they're having the physical capacity to be able to go over to Normandy, to fly out there, to glad hand 30,000 people, to be out in the salty cold and all the rest of it. It, has it sort of reached its high point? How do you foresee it going in the next couple of years? Because I mean, the next big anniversary, I guess you could go 85. I'd be very surprised if there are many veterans left then. Um, and how do you kind of see it panning out from now on? I'm not looking
It's
for
a
business tips, by the way. I'm just It's a general question.
no,
So I was just about to say that. I said, why is that? Have we got skin in the game by any chance? Yeah.
I do indeed.
it's a really good question, and we get asked it a lot. And my kind of reference is I look back to the centenary of the First World War. Um, and see how much interest was around that, and then continued around that period. And I foresee that will be the same with the Second World War. We're all very busy already with lots and lots of interest, and I can see that remaining pretty much the same. And then it will probably grow as we approach the centenary. One thing that's just happened just over a week ago, the archives have now started to release the medal cards for Second World War veterans. So
Okay.
you can start to research family history to some extent a little bit easier than you used to be able to. As more records become available, it'll be easier for families to then research their loved ones, and then will no doubt want to go back, walk in the footsteps, make those visits. So I think we're busy as it is. As we approach that centenary, I think it will kick on even more.
Wow. All right. So you're planning out the next 15 years for us then.
Literally, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's and in some ways we should all be looking towards that centenary as well. What can we kind of collectively do to ensure that there are things going to happen, that people are going to have the opportunity to visit, remember? And I always say we're stronger all working together than against each other in this business as well.
Me too.
And we I'd like to say we're doing it all for the right reasons as well, to honour those and remember.
Yeah. And I mean, is Normandy changing? There was all this sort of like, other than actors in the West End, I haven't met a more histrionic and dramatic set of individuals than guides and historians, if I'm entirely honest. They don't half go off on one and are very dramatic and sort of competitive and that kind of things. But that's by the by. But I've heard a lot about sort of how Normandy's changing. Is it becoming more sort of techie driven? I mean, people were saying about it becoming a kind of like Overlord Disneyland. Is that a thing, or am I mishearing that? Or
So I did listen to someone recently that had made reference to they'd been out there 15 years ago and went back, and it was completely different. And I personally was thinking I've been
no,
going
it isn't.
for 20 years and it really hasn't changed that much. Yes, museums have improved. We've grown with new museums that are all very good. They all bring their own unique angle to the history, displays, experiences. Dead Man's Corner is the prime example for a bit more of a different experience
Yeah,
for
that's a
museums
kick-ass
in
museum, man.
Normandy. But out on the ground, walking the battlefield, depending on where you go, it's the same as 1944 in certain areas. There's no urban sprawl. The villages haven't
Yeah.
grown. The town hasn't grown. You can stand a field that is identical to 80 years ago, and a lot of that countryside all around the populated areas is as it was. Yet
Mm.
you see new memorials cropping up. New memorials are built. You could argue that in some ways, some of them aren't needed. Smaller ones for units that may not have any recognition out there. That's good because again, it draws families back and gives them the chance to remember. But some of the larger memorials, you could question: was it really needed with what was already there as well? Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and on that, Ben, actually, because what we're talking about when we're talking about Normandy here, you and I anyway, what we're talking about is the beaches. So the five beaches and that sort of inlandy bit for the first few days. But is there is there scope for it to improve inland? Because I know I spoke to Paul Woodage about this. He's got a big thing about all the battles that go on inland and everything that do get overlooked because people go there for 3, 4 days, wander around the beaches, do the morals, and all the rest of it, and then all the inland where a lot of serious heavy fighting happened gets kind of overlooked.
yeah, we could collectively again do more to try and get people visiting inland. There is so much to see. You do the beaches, you do the drop zones, landing zones. You're really looking at a 24 hour snapshot of a 3 month campaign.
Right.
Because
Uh,
the battle for Cannes, didn't that go on for like it wasn't until July or August that the Allies won that took that town, wasn't it? Whereas
yes,
off the beaches within a day,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? And all those battlements and all the stuff that you see alongside the beaches, but the towns around it, they still held on. There were huge, intense fighting for until July, August in some cases, weren't there?
yeah, that's right. So Cairns a very good example. The British and Canadian all stuck just northwest of the city from the 6th of June till the 8th of July. And then they liberate the northern half of Cairn on the 10th of July. That is liberated. It's not till the
Mm,
19th of July. The southern side is then liberated.
mm,
You're 15 kilometres from the beach.
mm, mm,
But there's reasons why it was obviously a slog for the British and Canadians there, really hard fighting. But even to draw people in around the area of Cairn, there's so much to see if you go walk in the fields, go walking in the villages. A great example would be Beron, where the Canadians were. And during the summer, as I do in the evening, back to the hotel, quickly get changed, go out walking, went to that village, walking down a tiny little track with a farmhouse. And people will probably say it's a bit sad, but I'll look at the stone walls. Is there any graffiti etched on the walls? Is there battle damage on the walls? And I came across a swastika marked in black on the wall.
wow.
And the wearing on it, I was more than happy that that was 1944, and it wouldn't have surprised me that it's on there because the 12th SS, the Hitler Youth, were there, and it's a little bit of probably a calling card mark that they
Yeah,
left. So
yeah.
there's so much you could class it as hidden history out beyond the beaches, still to be seen, explored, and that's where you really get stuck into the battle.
Mm, mm.
Um, so I want to just sort of move away from Normandy and follow the path of our 13-day tour that you and I did that you didn't say was the highlight of your year. Um, but it's fine. uh, Market Garden. So what did you do for Market Garden? And you just expand upon this a little bit because what are the because when you're in Normandy, it still looks the same, no matter what any crazy historian's going to tell you that it looks like Disneyland now. It looks like Normandy. But obviously, Market Garden and in and around Eindhoven and Arnhem and all those places don't look the same anymore. They're sort of like quite sophisticated towns now and university towns and all the rest of it. Um, how is it different touring there? How was the celebrations different? And culturally speaking, there's a lot of questions in one, by the way. Culturally speaking, how do they celebrate it differently? Like even when you walk across the river and the lights come on,
Yeah.
there's something different about that. There's something, I don't know, I guess uniquely Dutch about it. I don't know. But it's very different to anything you'd find in Normandy, isn't there?
Yeah, I wasn't there for the commemorations this year. I was in Normandy, but I have been to the commemorations in the Netherlands before. I've visited Eindhoven, Arnhem, so on. The end part of your question is probably the easiest bit to answer in relation to the Dutch people, and it completely took me back on one of my first visits with just how much they appreciate and are grateful for the freedom, liberation that took place. It is a different level to what you see in France, and I, I don't know the real reason behind that. The French are grateful. They'll come out, they take part in the commemorations, but it's not on the scale of what you see with the Dutch people that just pour out hundreds, thousands of them on the street. The Dutch Liberation Parade at Wageningen is a great example that the first time I went there, people just hanging out of windows, sitting out of windows. And it got me thinking as well, why don't we do this back home in the UK? Why don't we appreciate this and commemorate as they do? And I think the simple answer is that those European countries were occupied where we weren't. So we don't have that.
Mm.
I don't trying to get the right words across, but they appreciate it far more because of the occupation and what happened to their grandfathers, grandmothers, the citizens in the country. We didn't have that here in the UK. For touring the Netherlands, the battles itself, if you're looking at Market Garden, it's quite compact, really, because you're going down a narrow route from Eindhoven, Nijmegen onto Arnhem. It's not obviously the width of what you look at Normandy, so it's quite concentrated around the cities and the outskirts for the drop zones. And yeah, the built-up areas are going to have changed, but once you get out into the countryside, those drop zones are pretty much as they were. Arnhem rebuilt quite extensively because of the battle damage. So when you stand on John Frost Bridge, it's obviously different to what you would have seen September 44. But you can still appreciate it. You can pick out new buildings and get a sense of what devastation took place. It is very different with the commemorations to Normandy, for sure.
And was that because they were starving to death?
Yeah, you have that as well. Yeah, the Germans stopping
What, they starved the Dutch? They
food.
starved the Dutch out.
Yeah, you had the hunger winter, and that's probably more punishment than anything out towards the Dutch civilians.
And they didn't do that in occupied France then?
No.
What was it about? Was that a deliberate act of against the locals because of the resistance? Was there a higher level of resistance? Were they?
Yeah, whether it's resistance, whether apathy shown to the Allies. I think, and you could also throw in the mix the Germans knowing as well that this is, well, it was pretty much the end as soon as we touched down in Normandy, but now you're right back close to the German border. That it's coming to an end, and it's just a punishment for the Dutch civilians, acts of reprisals against them. And yeah, that is a valid point as well. That is something that the hardship that they went through, and you speak to some of the veterans as well. Alan King was a good example of that. That one of the first things when you started to talk to him about the Netherlands, he always said about just how hard it was for the Dutch civilians, that they were struggling for food, that they, as soldiers, they were given food and they were more than happy to kind of forgo it and give it to the Dutch civilians to make sure they had a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. Even speak to guys like Joris, who you know pretty well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's very ingrained in him, very ingrained. It's very much in his DNA. Even when he talks about Operation Market Garden, which of course, and Arnhem, which of course for us and for me, my father was a paratrooper, huge wound in the British Army, huge wound. When I used to go to church in Sandhurst with my mum, and there'd be paintings of Arnhem, and we'd speak about like the huge wound. But for him, Arnhem was a success because it helped liberate, their situation, bloody mess that it was. It accelerated the liberation of the Netherlands. So they see it kind of differently, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. And the likes of Yorin or speaking to Edwin, their own personal perspective. And I guess education in school has a big part to play as they've grown up over the years. I'd say we're not too dissimilar in age, where we don't really have that here in the UK, but whether it's France, Normandy, whether it's in the Netherlands, it is part of the history of their country, and they do appreciate what took place and their liberation and the freedom that they gained back after well over 4 years of occupation.
Do you reckon that education could be a key thing in connecting it with the tours as the decades pass, and obviously relatives will be an extra generation in between there'll be another generation of sort of, it won't be your granddad, it will be your great great granddad or great great great. Do you reckon education plays a big part in people wanting to, take part in a tour, to go and see the battlefields, and actually be on the ground, because a lot of it is like, the ones that, you're in a field. Do you know what I mean? You're in a field, and it's only because when you have a guide and they say, well, the Germans along this hedgerow and all this kind of stuff, and kind of explain it. But if you were to just drive past it, you wouldn't know it from Adam. But do you feel that education around about the Second World War specifically needs to be kind of, robust? I don't even know if they teach it in English schools anymore, do they? I mean, who's have you've got teenage? I mean, did your son ever learn it, Matthew, in school in history?
He didn't do history.
Not even in no, not even in secondary school. You didn't do any.
He wasn't the Second World War then, no. But he
Uh,
didn't. He didn't do history up to GCSE level. He did something else.
yeah,
I mean, I'm pretty sure in somewhere like the Netherlands, it's mandatory.
I think it's pretty big in Holland, isn't it, Ben? Like in the schools, it must be.
Yeah, and they'll actively take part in the commemorations as well. Where
Mm,
even you, well, in the UK, I wouldn't necessarily say that the schools they may have short, small remembrance services within the schools, but they're not actively going out to big parades on mass or
mm,
go to Remembrance Sunday. They cover the home front, so they do the Blitz, they do rationing, and then the Holocaust, when I think they're about 13, I think they take them into learning the around the Holocaust. They would have done a bit this year for Normandy because the commemoration's all on the TV, but I wouldn't say that is not, it's not national curriculum as such.
yeah.
So yeah, education is a big part, and to capture the younger generation, to keep them coming through, yeah, the schools need to do well. The schools obviously will have a remit on what they can or can't do, but I always say, and I said this to Matt, for both of you, things like Band of Brothers, Masters of the Air
Mm,
now as well, they're going to be the go-to things that will introduce early teens to Second World War history, and then
mm,
hopefully that'll be the catalyst for them to gain that interest to then want to go away to learn more, go
mm,
visit places.
mm. If they were to do another band, because obviously they've done, a bit of the war in Europe with Following the Airborne, done the Pacific, now done the Masters of the Air. Would would you like, if they were to do another 10 episode miniseries, what area of the war would you like to see it?
Oh, good question. I'll be biased. It'd be nice to see a British perspective.
Hmm.
And I'd
But
say,
where, like in, because obviously it could be in Africa or it could be in Europe alongside, whether it's Normandy or
yeah,
the
It'd be
the,
good to see a unit that got evacuated out of Dunkirk, taken back, retooled, refitted, and going back again. I think that would be a kick-ass
yeah, that would
story.
be quite cool.
yeah, that'd be good. I'd say I'm probably biased because obviously being with Alan a lot of the time, a tank crew, looking at the tank crew, and you could do that with the East Riding Yeomanry, Matt. You could do that. Uh,
I'll have a word
retreat,
with Spielberg. Jeez, you just keep hawking that book of yours, don't you? All right, go.
retreat from Dunkirk, refit,
Yeah,
and then go again from Normandy all the way through. Well, 1947 he gets back, but yeah, the uh, to mirror a British version of the Band of Brothers series, start to finish, would be amazing. And I'm sure the Canadians would come along and say there's Canadian units that would be able to do exactly the same with as well.
Mm.
yeah.
What were the other big drops then of the parachute regiment? Obviously, you had Arnhem, but
Varsity.
what did, I mean? Were they dropped into Italy and stuff before? Where else were they?
Yeah, Italy 43, and
Yeah.
then Operation Varsity March 1945. So we've got obviously got that anniversary next year.
Mm.
That probably out of all of the anniversaries is the one that will be least commemorated or least
Where's
visited.
that? Which one's that?
It's where they jump across the Rhine.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
biggest single airborne drop in one day throughout the whole war. In episode 9 of Band of Brothers, when you
Yeah.
see Lewis Nixon and he comes back in the Jeep and he's in a foul mood, his wife's left him, all that kind of stuff, and he gets demoted and he says he's got to write a letter because he was the only one who made it out of the plane. He was
Right.
actually jumping in on varsity. That's what he'd been doing.
Ah.
And he was the only guy that made out the plane. The rest of the stick caught fire or crashed or whatever happened. Yeah, it's worth reading about. Operation Varsity is worth reading about. But I think, Ben, me and you might have spoken about this before. Either that or me and Mooch, one of the two, because it was it Montgomery again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Monk.
And I was like, how did he persuade people after the disaster of Arnhem to be able to do almost exactly the same thing with Varsity? I mean, I know he
I
stitched
would,
everything
yeah.
up.
I was going to ask about him because he didn't do great, like commanding the British forces on D-Day. His task was calm, and it took a month and a half to get. Do you know what I mean? It was that whole. I don't know what flank it was that coming down to it, but that was kind of he was in charge of that, and then obviously the disaster up at Arnhem and Market, like a total disaster. I mean, I kind of like he built his reputation in Africa, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
did he? And was that his only success essentially, or?
he was obviously out in Dunkirk, came back. British Third Infantry Division came back from Dunkirk, uh, goes off to Africa. Yeah, Africa campaign is a success. Uh, Planning for Overlord. I massively stick up for Montgomery over Normandy campaign, and I think over time there are some historians out there. I'd say they're quite dated books now from God, probably 40 years ago that
Mhm.
point the stick at the British Canadians saying that they were sitting around drinking tea, they didn't do enough to advance quick enough, Caen wasn't taken. But when you start to look at the plan around what Montgomery envisages is going to take place, he knows that the Germans are all going to be coming in from that eastern side towards the area of Caen. If
Mm,
he can hold the bulk of the German armor panzer divisions back there, it should give the Americans an easier breakout from the western side. And
right.
that effectively, it does happen. But Khan, yeah, you as you say, yeah, ideally it should have been taken on the 7th of June,
Mm,
and then they would have pushed south beyond it. But I don't think it really makes too much of a difference because we still would have been pinned there by all the German panzer units coming in.
yeah.
And Montgomery also says in his planning he sees the Normandy campaign is going to take 90 days, and
Right.
collectively we do it in 75 days, so we're ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the breakout from Normandy, you're pretty much back on the German border at Aachen. The Americans are fighting from, I think, the 17th of September around Aachen, the Hurtgen Forest. So, yeah, but Montgomery, you could say, is cautious. Market Garden is completely the opposite of being cautious. So
Mm,
he goes for something that's quite ambitious. It doesn't work. Um, but then Eisenhower's got everybody, let's say everybody, Patton, Bradley, Montgomery, all lobbying for the resources because they think they can go from the south to end the war, or Montgomery through the Low Countries, through Belgium, Netherlands, and into Germany. Eisenhower's got to manage all of this and kind of choose what he thinks is right and trust his generals really. And he,
mm,
well,
mm.
he was obviously a very good military leader, and then also you can see why he goes on to be president twice, serving two terms because he was a very good politician to manage all these egos.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, then we should probably talk the Bulge.
Mm,
80th anniversary of the Bulge. We'll be there in the snow. Are you there?
sure am. Yeah, I hope for snow as well. That'd be nice.
Yeah, Yeah. Oh, are you there with the
I
tour?
think we're due to get it. We're forecast to get snow in Berlin this week.
Oh Lord.
So I think a lot of Northern Europe's going to be under snow or getting some snow in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it's turned very cold here, which is quite yeah, not unusual, but it has turned quite cold around here. So yeah, I think you're probably going to get some.
Yeah, it always adds to the experience, and when you do that anniversary period, you always hope that you kind of got the conditions that were similar to that winter, just to give people that tiny little insight and just how bad it would have been. You can't comprehend what it must have been like for them fighting in those conditions.
Yeah. Well, that's why I dug my tour group up and took them to the foxholes at 6 a.m. in the snow.
Good idea. It's worth it. It is worth
Crazy.
it. But yeah, yeah,
But the thing is,
people.
everyone went with him, Ben. Everyone got up and did it. It was just
Everyone
like
did it.
everyone
Like
loved it.
literally,
It was
I thought
nuts.
we'd have a bus with like six nutters on it,
That's
and
what I thought you'd have.
everybody was on the
Yeah.
bus in the dark, and we go to the foxholes in the snow.
Yeah. I think we all know what the people are like that come on our tours, and yeah, they'll probably, oh, we're getting up at 6, but then when they've done it, they'll look back and reflect and think that was pretty good thing to go and do at that time, and just to get that appreciation and
Yeah,
no.
I just felt like for myself it was an all-time backfire because I was just trying to be a massive dick, and they had the best time ever. So I was just like, I was the one that was freezing cold and miserable, and everyone's wandering around like, "This is an incredible experience, Matthew. Thank you." So that's not what I intended to do at all. I was just trying to torture you.
The photos were fantastic,
Yeah,
like the
they were.
eerie
It
kind
was an
of
amazing
morning.
time
Yeah,
to be fair. Are
yeah.
you there on tour, Ben?
Yes, yeah, yeah, we're there for 4 days, so not long, but again, two full days.
Where'd you base yourself?
God, good
Who for
question.
leave?
I haven't looked. No, I'm not sure where we're at. Actually, yeah, Dinan. No, Namur. We're in
You just
Namur.
you're making words up now. Where are you based, Ben?
Yeah, we are staying in Namur,
Namor. And where's
and
Namor?
probably about 45-minute drive out from Bastogne.
Everything's a 45-minute drive from Bastogne. It's a geographical
Even
odyssey
Bastogne
in that
train
sense.
station
Yes,
is a
exactly.
45
Even
minute
Bastogne
drive.
is 45 minutes from Bastogne.
On the River Meuse, and yeah, we're on the western bank, and we'll cross over. It's probably about half an hour north of where we stayed when we went with Pete. Uh,
Oh, Boulogne or Boulogne, whatever it's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's not too far from there, really.
Oh, that
When,
was actually a question. I was gonna go on to this in a slightly more whimsical thing. I was gonna say what's the weirdest thing that's happened on a tour to you, but it's gotta be Pete, hasn't it? Do you remember when he coughed up his Adam's apple? You don't
What?
remember that? So we were I was on a tour with Ben and Ledger. So we had Ben and Tim Matthews. Sorry, Pete McCabe, Ben, Tim Matthews. You know Pete McCabe, Hoobler. For those of you who haven't quite joined the dots up yet, who is a character in and of himself, hilarious dude.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he got on the bus like morning 3. We're in this kind of little chalet type thing next to the river, very beautiful place. And he got on and he said he was cleaning his teeth and he was coughing and he coughed up his Adam's apple.
What? Is that even possible?
I know. I
I
know
can
it's impossible.
I can remember him getting lambasted in a service station by someone at a kiosk. I can remember that.
Yeah, he got into a fight with somebody. It was to
Did
do with
he?
buying cigarettes. Yeah, yeah. And he because Pete's an interesting one in that Pete's French, but pretends he can't. So he I don't know, he got into it and they ended up like yelling at one another through the glass. But after the tour, the Normandy tour I did, We Happy Few one with Woody, he spent the whole time there letting me speak my piss poor French to try and get things done. And then we went from Cannes to Paris on the train, and we got lost on the Paris metro. There was this underground city. I don't know which Paris metro station it is, but it's like Heathrow Terminal 5 underground, right? Like seriously, we were complete with just these weird escalators going everywhere and just like a dystopian underground hellhole we got lost in Kafka's nightmare. And I'm trying to talk to people to say, like, my poor French, how do I get out of here? How do I get on a line that goes somewhere near the airport? The airport, Charles de Gaulle. And after about the fifth person, he goes up and starts talking. And he's like, no, no, that's not what he said. And he spoke freaking perfect French. He just pretended he couldn't the whole time. But his best one, my favorite one, was going on that tour when we got to Charles de Gaulle Airport. We were like French customs, so we're going through. It's just mayhem. There's like no rules at French customs for anybody who's flown into Charles de Gaulle Airport. There's a line like you're getting into a nightclub, but people just join from all angles. So we're in this line for ages, and as it snakes this way like that from right to left, I turn around, and there's a guy that looks just like Peter Lorre. I'm so very sorry, Peter Lorre. And I said to Pete McCabe, I was like, Pete, check it out. That guy looks just like Peter Lorre. And no word of a lie, he turns around and he goes, and he looks for about like 15 seconds. He goes, who's Peter Lorre? Who were you looking for? Who were you looking for? Yes. What is the weirdest thing that's happened to you? It doesn't need to be rude, and it can't incriminate anybody or do down any of the vendors or companies that you work for. But what is the weirdest thing that's happened on tour? Literally anything you can think of has happened when I toured with the World War II Museum. Like in a truncated period of time, like the most bonkers things happen, which I cannot and will not speak about. Um, but anything you can imagine happened.
Like someone going all New York on someone.
Oh, yeah, you can tell that story. That's fine.
God, I'm I'm probably quite boring. I've never lost any passengers, which is always a good thing. I don't know. I'm probably fortunate that tours usually run pretty well. We do all our itineraries, but God, I couldn't pick anything out straight away of what happened.
I've had passengers. I'll be careful now, not naming any names. I've had tour passengers refuse to get out the bar, like the bus is leaving and they refuse to get out the bar. I've had that definitely. So they're not lost; they're just refusing to get back on the bus, like some type of
What, drunk or sober?
bit of
Drunk.
both. Yeah, bit
Yeah.
of both. Yeah, yeah, just refusing to get back on the bus.
And how do you deal
Uh,
with those?
well, it took some persuading. It did take some persuading.
You can't just leave.
No, you can't just leave, unfortunately. Although, and I don't think she would mind me telling this story um, with the World War II Museum, but Sarah Kirksey, who is like head honcho of the World War II Museum's travel, was she, before she got promoted, she was like the golden girl of touring. She was like the tour manager. She's brilliant at her job, excellent. Her family came with her on a tour, and she got so miffed with her brother that she did drive off without him one day. He was a little bit tardy, and she just drove the bus off, leaving him standing in the bus stop in Bayou, looking at the bus because he was just ever so slightly late. Yeah, just left a brother standing. That was pretty funny. I've also had somebody, and I can't name names again, wish I could, turn a guide's microphone off because he was so boring. Um,
Really?
so it was one of them buses where the guide's downstairs next to the driver. So it's almost like a double decker bus, but not for those of you who are visualizing this. So all the passengers are on what is kind of a top deck, and the bus underneath is just, I don't know, it's got luggage or something. And there's a bus driver, and the guide sits downstairs with the microphone, and he was droning on for so long that the tour manager who definitely wasn't Sarah Kirksey, got up and turned the microphone off, and everyone just sat in silence for about an hour. That was absolutely hilarious.
Uh, uh, yeah, I couldn't think of any real story
You
like
don't want
that.
to tell the Eric Daw one because you were definitely there for that.
Oh, wow,
What's
no,
the Eric Daw
I'd
story?
gone for a walk in Bayeux.
No, you
I had a
hadn't.
phone call to return to the hotel, so I
No,
got
you hadn't. You're trying not to incriminate yourself. Why am I always the bad guy?
yeah, I got back to the aftermath of it, and
Yeah.
then to to sort
What
it.
happened? What happened?
Um. Well, we were staying in a hotel, and they were a little overwhelmed
Yeah,
by the amount of people in there. They
Mhm.
also had what seems to me to be a very young front of house staff and kitchen staff. I don't know what was going on. It seemed to be a breakdown in leadership, basically. And so they had fobbed off a quite stressful situation on a bunch of kids, which is never a good idea because they just don't do anything. And we had a touring group of however many people who were supposed to be fed at a certain time. And we all sat down and there wasn't any food. And then they were mucking everybody about. Eric Daw complained a couple of times and nothing happened. And then he just, like you said, went New York on everybody's ass. He just ran through the hotel lobby with his ponytail flying out the back, like Rocky and Bullwinkle type of thing, and just booted his way into the kitchen and started yelling at everybody.
I think when I got back, it was the restaurant manager had told me that his chef had decided everybody was having white fish, and that
Oh,
was it.
okay.
So everybody got served white fish. That was the only option. There was people with food allergies,
Yes, there
and there was
was.
not
Yeah,
between the restaurant manager and the chef that was refusing to do stuff. I mean, the
Gosh.
restaurant manager was good because he ordered in God the stack of pizzas for us all, didn't he? At the end, just to
yeah. You think
do
you
it.
might have opened up the bar as well. I was like, yeah,
Yeah, it
this
was a
is
free
fine.
bar as well. Yeah,
Fine.
the restaurant bar manager looked after us in that regards, but yeah, uh, yeah. Apart from that, it's been a quiet season really on that.
Yeah, I don't believe you at all. I think that you are being very political. Knowing you as I do, then knowing knowing the type of person you are and your ability to keep several secrets at one time, I don't believe you. But whatever, doesn't matter. Um, so you mentioned before, we'll sort of do another 10 minutes. You mentioned before about the World War One tours. Um, do you think there's, I guess geographically it's not possible, but is there any chance that we'll end up looking a little further forward from 1945? I mean, it's pretty darn hard to go over to Korea, but
Yeah, it's where when we lose our Second World War veterans, we're not going to have that opportunity to really walk the battlefields of the future veterans as such. We
A
can't.
long way to the Falklands, isn't it?
yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
exactly. Yeah, Iraq, Afghanistan, completely off limits. Yeah, it's going to be very different for future or more recent conflicts to go and do what we do. So, First, Second World War will, I think, always be there and have that interest because it's tangible. People are going to be able to go to it where these more recent, say Korea's not that recent, is it? It's just after the Second World, but it's not accessible. It's not easy to get to. Vietnam, yeah, you could go out to Vietnam from an American perspective, can't you? That's a regular place to go, but it's a fair
Mm,
distance.
mm.
Um, yeah, yeah,
But the World War Two will always kind of because of the nature of the conflict and because of
Mm.
the personalities involved. I mean, there's a clear baddie. There's a clear, Nazi is such a clear, you know what I mean, black and white situation. It's clear good against evil. It's the classic
yeah,
story of war on any level. on conflict, even if the conflict is an argument between two people. It is the most black and white, it's the most, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that will
dictator.
always resonate with people, wouldn't it? It will always resonate, even more so than the First World War, because the First World War, you were just against the Germans, you weren't against the Nazis. The Nazis were something different, you know what I mean? So I always think that the Second World War will like retain that kind of interest because of obviously because of the size of the conflict, but because of the powers involved. Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I'm confident for all of us that we're through our lifetimes that interest is always going to be there and continue.
Yeah.
People will want to go back. And yeah, you're right with what you say, kind of what the Allies were fighting against: dictatorship, the
Mm,
Nazis, oppression, genocide.
mm.
Um, it's that clear end goal that the Allies were working towards. Yeah, and
You're
a
not
lot of,
dying for an oil field. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Though, kind of thing. It's not. It's not to take anything away from the conflict in the early 21st century, but you know.
yeah, the spin that can be put to the likes of Iraq wars
Mm,
around oil. Yeah, I do
mm,
understand what you're saying with that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A good thing is that, well, First, Second World War battlefields are so accessible as well and within reach for
mm.
all of us in Europe to get to.
Mm. All right, well, I'll round up with one last question because I know what mine would be. I just can't seem to get anybody interested. What's
Go
your
on.
dream tour if you could do
What was your
like a
what was go on? What is yours then, Matt? Your dream tour?
Spanish Civil War?
Oh, really?
Yeah, origins of the ideological war, Condor division, all that business. It's when the Soviets backed one side, the Nazis backed the other, and they were basically feeling one another out. And there was a lot of sort of partisan massacres, and it was a really horrendous, bloody conflict. But it was the beginnings of the ideological war, kind of fought
Mm-hmm.
away from everywhere before it sort of exploded on the Eastern Front. And I think it's fascinating. I just don't know a lot about it, so
Mm,
maybe I just have to go on a Spanish Civil War tour rather than do one.
yeah.
Uh, I think it'd be incredible. It's the first time like Stuka dive bombers are used and all this kind of stuff that we sort of think of that happened later on. So it's
Mm,
happening in Spain years before.
yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if there is. I don't know if anybody even does it. You're nodding along. Do you do it?
I don't personally do it, but Ledger have got Spanish Civil War. Actually, no, I'm thinking Peninsular War. No, I don't think there is Spanish Civil War. No,
Mm,
I'm not aware of anyone that's actively taking large groups. I know Sean Scullion has recently written a book
Yeah.
uh, that links into the Spanish Civil War, and that's a big uh, interest to him.
Huh.
If
Okay.
you've not met Sean before,
No, I
he's
haven't.
one that has a big interest that in the Spanish Civil War, that part. Um, but for me, I'd really like to go to do the Africa campaign, do Alamein.
Oh yeah.
mm.
When I was 16, I did go to Tunisia on a family holiday, and I don't know why my parents let me do this, but I went off on a tour on my own. You could say 16 is old enough, isn't it? But I ended up with some Tunisian tour guide at a very small group all around there. So I've seen parts of the
They
Africa
didn't
camp.
they didn't sell you to a Bedouin tribe or something, did they? Please take him.
Yeah,
They just brought him
we
back
did
again.
go, we did go to Tatooine, and
Oh,
you went into the like the Bedouin caves, and we had lunch in someone's house, uh,
nice.
which is all a bit odd looking back on it, and probably not the safest of things to do. But yeah, to go do the British perspective out from Egypt towards Libya, I think would be really interesting to
That
do.
would be cool, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you what that leads into as well, Ben. I know you've got mixed feelings about this, but I'm going to mention it anyway because I'm very excited. Have you seen the trailer for the new SAS Rogue Heroes?
No, I did enjoy the
Looks
first
awesome,
series.
awesome.
They're bringing out the second season.
Yeah, there's a trailer for it
Oh,
online. Yeah, it looks wicked.
oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did enjoy that first series, and it's an area campaign that I could do a lot more reading research on and
Mm,
understand more. And even that program, it's bringing more people to Second World War history and sparking an interest
mm,
for people. So
absolutely. Yeah.
it's
yeah,
yeah,
because they
no
got to go.
difference.
They, I mean, they start out now in Italy, I believe, from doing some forward reading. They end up supporting like the paratroopers become like shock troops in Italy, but then they sort of end up kind of spearheading the advance, which drives Paddy Mayne nuts because he doesn't want them to do that.
Mm.
Um, I don't know whether they'll. I mean, I know they end up in Germany as well, but I don't know whether this season will just be in Italy. But it does. It
Oh,
just looks
cool.
so
That'd be
so
brilliant.
cool.
Yeah.
Because you've got, is it the ungentlemanly warfare or something that's come
Yeah,
out
the
of
Ministry of
Italy as
Ungentlemanly
well?
Warfare. Yeah,
Yeah, I still haven't seen that, and that's something that I need to look at with Commando, kind of.
yeah.
What's
It's
that?
all right.
What
It's
is
called the
it?
Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
What is
It's
it? A show or what?
it's like SAS Rogue Heroes Light, basically, but in a movie. And I don't want to do it down because my friend's in it. And I did enjoy it, but it's not anywhere on the level of SAS Rogue Heroes, which is just bad ass. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I've read ahead on all that happens now, and I watched. There's a really good. I think it's a documentary. Let's get your friend on the pod. Yeah, I will. His name's George Asprey. I was going to get him on. We were in AKA together. He's the commander of the ship that picks them up. Um, oh man, if you've thrown me now. Anyway, doesn't matter. Whatever I was talking about, I will round up and leave you. Leighton threw me with a message just then. Oh no, yes, no, I've done a bunch of reading. It has this really good documentary that's got it was made in about '86, so it's got David Sterling in it and Reg Skeegs and all these guys
Mhm.
talking about the Italy campaign, and it was brutal for them, absolutely brutal. There's because they get, I think, boated in at one point, and there's been a parachute drop, but they've dropped them out to sea, and they what they want to do is stop and pick up the guys that are drowning in the ocean, and their orders are to hit the beaches and get on with it straight away. So, like some of them talk about it like we just had a job to do, and others are just totally messed up by it.
What is this the SAS? Because I think because had the author Tom Patch.
Yeah, yeah, we did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
part of that book was obviously centered around the Italy,
Mm-hmm.
the stuff they did in Italy. I remember it now. Yeah. I must
Yeah.
go and listen to that again, actually. I got it on audio book. It's
Oh,
really
you
good.
did? Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, very cool. All right. Well, as I can hear, my son has still not settled after an hour of screaming. I better go and help my wife out. Watch me go in and just pick him up and he'll fall asleep on me straight away now. It's not going to happen. All right, guys. Cheers, Ben. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate your input. Really appreciate you catching up and talking about the year. And we'll get you on
Thanks,
again and
man.
we'll talk some other history stuff. And anybody got any topics and stuff they want to talk about with me, Ben, and Doug, let us know because it's always good to
Please
chat
do.
history as well as half
Yeah,
the other guff we talk about.
yeah.
Um, but thanks very much. Cheers for watching, everybody. And
All right, guys. See
we'll
you.
see you next
Thank
week.
you.
Cheers,
Cheers.
guys.
Bye, bye.